the Dawgs Podcast with your hosts, Blake Reneker, Justin Charles, and Josh All.
What's up, Browns fans? Welcome back to another episode of the Dawgs Podcast. Not live today because we are recording, coming to you with an awesome interview we got lined up for you with DC Defenders Matt McCrane. He's kicked for the Browns before, been around the NFL. He's now kicking in the UFL. You guys don't want to miss this. So make sure you guys stay tuned. Check this out. Before we dive into the interview, though, remember, if you want to get your intros, your voicemails on the show, head to thedawgspodcast.com, tap leave voicemail on the drop-down menu. You can also find our merch store. Me and Josh did not call each other today.
No, we did not.
These are not Dawgs Podcast t-shirts, but Josh and I still dressed alike. We didn't call each other. We saw each other when we got ready before we came. We showed up and I was like, oh man, me and Josh are wearing the same shirt. This is embarrassing.
Cute.
Yeah. thedawgspodcast.com, tap leave voicemail. You can also find the merch store. We got cool stuff in there. Remember, if you are watching on YouTube, please like and subscribe. Make sure you tap the notification bell so you don't miss any of the new content we're putting out. We got a lot of cool stuff getting ready to come up. A lot of cool opportunities for the show coming up this offseason. You don't want to miss any of it. You can also listen on Apple, Spotify, and Google, or find us on any of the major social media platforms. Just search at the Dawgs Podcast. Lastly, if you're looking for more Dawgs content, head to jointhedawgs.com. Become an official Dawg Pack member on our Patreon page. You get access to the private Discord. You get an extra episode every week, fantasy football with us. When we have guests on like we do today, we will let you get some questions in, so you get to ask questions to our special guests. You know, sometimes we have guys kicking in the UFL. We've had Browns players before, so if you want a chance to get your question up to an NFL or a professional football player, make sure you join that Dawg Pack. Get a chance to interact with the show. Sometimes you even get to come on the show, like guys like Kenny Mack, DF, that kind of stuff. So that's jointhedawgs.com. Become an official Dawg Pack member. Before we head into the interview, I do want to remind you guys about the official home of the Dawgs Podcast, Kittle's Brick Oven Pub in Green, Ohio, right off the Maslin Road exit. Go check it out. We're going to have a pizza on the menu, a beer on the menu. The food there is great. We actually just had somebody go in there and rep us, talk about us for the first time. Justin, I think, got to talk to him.
Ben from Hartville. I literally just got out of work. It was looking super rough. I might shock you. Podcasting is not a full-time job for us. I work in a factory. So, I got to talk to him for a few minutes. Super nice guy. Was there with his family. Just wanted to tell him appreciate the support on both ends. But we also wanted to shout him out. First ever. So if you go into Kittle's right now, you mentioned you heard about him on the Dawgs Podcast, you'll get a free appetizer with the purchase of an entree. So make sure you guys mention us when you go there. Again, huge shout out to Ben. We appreciate you supporting the show, listening every week, and we appreciate you going, supporting our friends over at Kittle's. Again, that's Kittle's Brick Oven Pub in Green, Ohio, right off the Maslin Road exit. Go check them out. Mention the Dawg. Get yourself a free appetizer. We're super excited to be partnered with them and for them to be the official home of the Cleveland Browns. We are going to have a naming contest for our pizza and our beer. So listen up. If you want a chance to name the pizza and the beer, we will make an official post. This video is the official post for YouTube. We'll make an official post on Facebook, and we will make an official post on Twitter, and we'll pin it. If you want to name the pizza and you want to name the beer, comment your idea for the name for the pizza and the beer. Say pizza idea, whatever. Beer idea. You leave as many as you'd like.
Tell them what the pizza is.
Yes, the pizza is going to be a buffalo chicken pizza.
Delish.
In the beer, we are going to go up and taste a couple, but I would imagine based on all of our beer preferences, it's going to be some sort of light lager, light IPA kind of deal. So think of if that helps you with your naming. We are going to take all of your guys' suggestions and recommendations and ideas. We will come up with maybe our top 4 or 5, and then we'll post polls out on all the socials and let you guys vote. And you guys will name the pizza and name the beer that will be named after us at Kittle's Brick Oven Pub. So I think it's a really cool idea, fun idea to get you guys involved. You guys know we love having you guys involved on the show. So drop your ideas on Twitter, X, formerly known as Twitter, Facebook, again, and on this video on YouTube. I would say the only rules is it's just got to be restaurant appropriate.
Yeah,
that's right.
You don't have to be local. Obviously, you can be anywhere in the country and the world listening to this. If you're like, hey, I got a great idea what your pizza should be called, drop it in there. And the winner, we're probably going to be sending whoever's name gets picked. We'll send you a Kittle /Dawgs t-shirt.
Yep. We'll send you guys some merch. So again, let us know your ideas. The more we get, the better options we have, the better the pool will be. We're really looking forward to hearing your guys' ideas. Again, it's going to be a buffalo chicken pizza and probably some light lager, IPA, that kind of deal. So get your ideas in. We appreciate all the participation. So like I mentioned in the open, we're joined today with a very special guest. Matt McCrane joins us kicking for the Defenders in the UFL. He played at Kansas State. He is number 2 in the Big 12 Conference in their history in field goal percentage, number 7 in NCAA history in field goal percentage. He's made 86.4% of his kicks when he was in college. Spent some time in Cleveland. We're very pumped to have you on here, taking time out of your day to join us here on the Dawgs.
Yeah, man, I appreciate you guys having me. As I mentioned to you before you started the show, man, I enjoy being around Midwestern people and especially Cleveland Browns fans. So I look forward to it.
I'm really pumped to get your perspective on, you were here in 2020. We talked a little bit before we started recording. I'm really interested in getting your perspective on like your time in Cleveland. And then I'm really interested in like how the UFL is comparing in terms to like NFL life. And I wanted to get into a little bit, maybe like in the mental side of kicking. I don't know how much you know about Cade York and the Browns and how they drafted him, let him go, and now he's back. So I think we got a lot of cool stuff to get into today. One of the first things that we kind of talked about was in 2018, you kicked for the Cardinals after Phil Dawson. Obviously, he's a Cleveland legend. And we were just kind of curious, did you get to know him at all? Your impression? Did he teach you anything about how to approach the game like as a pro? I mean, he's kind of an NFL legend, not just a Cleveland legend.
Yeah. So, of course, Phil being a Texas guy like myself, I think we kind of connected right off the bat. But, man, that was a long preseason I spent with Arizona, and then they brought me back and forth many times while Phil was there. So it's funny, when I was competing, I guess you could call it, during that training camp with him. And he told me this later on. He said, I wasn't giving you any insight. I wasn't giving you any help because I didn't want you to beat me out. And so I think when he got injured and they brought me back in, Phil started to kind of coach me up and give me some help on kicking the football. So I thought that was pretty cool and fun of him, even, where he was at in his career, he was still competitive.
So you touched on, first of all, that's I got to meet Phil Dawson. Now a lot of people know this, and so did Josh. When we were in high school, we were actually on a TV show.
Oh, that's right.
And Phil Dawson gave out the awards on this TV show for somebody in our community. So we got to meet him when we were like 13, 14 years old. So that was pretty cool. But you kind of touched on how Arizona brought you back and forth a little bit. And I touched on Cade York already a little bit and tying it in with the Browns. And I was going through reading about you, learning a little bit, and I was just wondering, what is the life of a professional kicker that people might not know? I feel like you guys as kickers, we either don't hear about you or everybody's cussing you out. You know what I mean? You always hear that you have one job thing, and it's like, and it's just, I can't imagine it's a fun time. You want to be either unnoticed, or because it seems like if you're being noticed, it's never a good thing unless your name's Justin Tucker or Adam Vinatieri. Right. You know what I mean? So what goes into that? Like, it seems like the job security, and there's only one kicker on every team for the most part. Like, how do you stay up and stay positive? And because you're making kicks, you know what I mean? You're making your kicks. And then, just how do you stay in the right mental frame?
Yeah, I think that's something that I learned early on. Was I had success, early on in my college career and dealt with a little bit of injury in college, but then kind of picked right back up on it and had a good junior and senior season, which then ultimately got me into the National Football League. But when I got to the NFL, just as you mentioned, I mean, there's only 32 guys on a roster. And fortunately for me, early on in my NFL career, it was kind of during the heart of COVID. And so teams were carrying a practice squad guy, often kind of 2 practice squad specialists. And so that kind of opened my door to get on rosters. And so, when you look at my resume of teams that I've been with, I would say there was really only one team that I had a genuine chance of having that spot. And that's when I was with the Raiders. I had missed a couple kicks off the dirt. I'd missed one when we played in London. And then they replaced me with Daniel Carlson, who's had a great career and is still there. And so the rest of them, it's always been, okay, this guy's been injured. Can you come in for a week? obviously COVID, like I mentioned, but yeah, the mental struggle of being a professional, not only a football player, but a kicker, is it's a cutthroat league, man. I mean, you hear it all the time of, a kicker comes in, he has one bad game, he's cut, and another team picks him up and he has a stellar career after that. And so finding out the differences of why, you're successful with one team versus the other. And you see that with quarterbacks as well, jumping around the league. And so one thing that, looking back on is if I had a little bit more time and teams put a little bit more trust in, in their kickers, I think you can see them start to develop. Again, Cade York example, I think AB made a good move by bringing him back because he's a solid kicker, and, I was watching your show early on, you talk about kicking in the elements. I mean, at what point do you expect to have a 90% kicker when he's kicking in Cleveland? A Phil Dawson comes around once in a lifetime, the Adam Vinatieri's. But when you look at success across the National Football League, they tend to be indoor kickers, unless you get an outlier like Justin Tucker. And so I think you have to figure out where you're good at, and are you a good indoor kicker, or are you a good outdoor kicker? And I think teams have struggled sometimes finding that.
So then in relating to that, we always hear this with like quarterbacks too. All the quarterbacks can throw. They all got NFL arms. All the kickers in the NFL, they can all kick. How much of the game is between the ears? How much of it is mental? And if you hit a rough patch, maybe get cut a couple times, how hard is it to get it back? Like Cade York, how hard is it for him to come back in, refocus, and realize like, okay, I know I can kick at this level. I've done it before. I just got to relax and do it again. How hard is that?
Yeah, I think it's, to the everyday person, the viewer, you can allude it to, playing golf. It's absolutely between the ears. I was watching a Full Swing episode just the other day, and you see guys that, might make the cut or might not. And then the next week they're winning the tournament. So what's the difference between that, being successful and not being successful? And so it's hard, man. I mean, whenever I was jumping in between teams, when I was, like I said, with Phil Dawson back and forth with Arizona, I think, 3 or 4 times, is you go from having this NFL experience of being with the team nutritionist and being with strength and conditioning. You're at all these world-class facilities. And then the next day you're cut, and I'm back at home working, my restaurant and serving tacos out the window to customers. And so I think it's tough, man. And you have to be mentally tough to handle that, especially if for some reason you happen to miss a crucial kick. You just got to rebound and know that, hey, I deserve to be here.
Yeah, that's the mental side of just anything in professional sports, really anything in life, but sports and like we're talking about here with kicking and all that. But one thing that you did just mention that I wanted to make sure I ask you about, you mentioned AB, you thought he did the right thing, a good move by bringing Cade York back. What was your experience with Andrew Berry?
Yeah. So again, because I was there in COVID year, I really didn't get to spend because of the proximity sensors and all those things that we had to wear. I didn't get to spend a lot of time with management or ownership, but I did get to know AB pretty well, enough to where we stay in contact even to this day. And, he's a Harvard grad. He's an analytics guy. And I think he's trying to create, from my experience with him, we're trying to create, or Cleveland's trying to create that culture, right? How do we become a dynasty franchise similar to the Patriots or other, Baltimore, I think it's had a good run. And they still are, but how do you create that culture? I think it takes time, right? And I think it's finding, I mentioned it in an interview just the other day, it's finding that key, whether it's the quarterback or whoever, Joe Flacco, when he came in, right? That changed the franchise completely just by bringing one guy in and changing the culture. So I think AB's still trying to develop that, even with Stefanski, and find that key. I think they're all trying to find what that is.
I feel like we spend a lot of time telling our listeners and anybody who will listen that Cleveland they're turning the corner. They might not have reached the end goal yet, but where we were 6, 7, 8, 9 years ago, it feels like we're night and day compared to that. Did you I know you didn't get to be around, but did you get the sense like, okay, they're kind of trending in the right direction? Like I can kind of see where this is headed.
Yeah, well, when I was there in 2020, I think it's been the best season that Cleveland's had in a while. We made a pretty good playoff run. And, I know there's some differing fan opinions on Baker. But when I was there with him, I mean, he was not only from a cockiness or confidence, I played against him in college too. When I was at Kansas State, he was at Oklahoma. and then a funny story with Baker before I go on about him is when I first got signed by Cleveland, when I was with the Raiders, I had a game winner against Cleveland, and that was Baker's first career start in the National Football League. And so when I walked in the doors, like the first person to come up and he's like, "Hey, I just want you to know, I remember that you beat me on my first career start." So that was a funny thing with him, but I really enjoyed being around him because I got to see a leadership side of him as opposed to me being an opponent in college. And so I think he was kind of the glue of our team in 2020. And that ultimately led us to, down the playoff stretch. Granted, we had a lot of other talent on that team. But for me, being inside the locker room, I attribute a lot of that success to him. And I think he did a really good job for us.
I think we're all big Deshaun fans, but we've also given Baker a lot of credit in being a part of the culture change in Cleveland and like kind of being probably the only quarterback in that draft that could have survived 4 years into the turmoil he came into. So we've given him a lot of credit in being the guy to help kind of transition us into hopefully the next phase of what our franchise is.
And that's exactly right. It's transitional, right? I mean, we had a good run in 2020. And then, AB made the move to decide to bring Deshaun in. And then now where is that transition headed? And I think I have full faith in AB and in the ownership and Stefanski because, they know how to groom or how to create that culture. And when I was there in 2020, I got to see it firsthand and we made a good run.
This episode is brought to you by Omaha Steaks. Browns fans, nothing says summer is on its way like the taste of a juicy, tender burger that is grilled to perfection. And nobody does burger perfection like Omaha Steaks. And right now, when you guys go to omahasteaks.com/dogs, you can order the limited time Burger Perfection Flight. This is one of my favorite deals from last year that they did, and I'm so glad they're doing it again. You guys get 24 mouth-watering steak burgers, not just regular burgers, freaking steak burgers. The pure ground filet mignon burgers, the New York strip burgers, the ribeye burgers, the brisket burgers, the sirloin burgers, and the all-new porterhouse burgers. And you get all of that for just $89.99 when you use our code DAWGS DOGS when you check out. Each 6-ounce burger is filled with flavor from the mild and tender filet mignon to the rich and buttery ribeye. The quality and deliciousness of these burgers can only come from Omaha Steaks, and they are guaranteed to satisfy. And guys, at $3.75 a patty, you really can't beat that with the price of food right now. And the price of meat in the grocery stores is absolutely ridiculous. You cannot beat this deal. $90, $89.99 for 24 of these phenomenal, delicious, awesome steak burgers. And you get all of that when you use code DOGS at checkout. Go to omahasteaks.com, order the Burger Perfection Flight today, and do not forget to use that promo code DOGS, DAWGS, when you check out to get everything, the 24 delicious burgers. Hurry, because these supplies are limited. Take advantage of this opportunity now before supplies run out. omahasteaks.com/dogs, promo code DOGS.
So you brought up that Browns Raiders game, the OT game. I wanted to ask you about that because that's kind of, for Browns fans, we don't like to talk about the win part for the Raiders. We talk about, man, that was Nick Chubb's kind of coming out party. He had like 3 carries for 120 yards. That's right. But like, I wanted to ask you, like, what's that moment like? You're trying to stay on a roster. You're going out in an OT game, game-winning situation. Like, are you ice cold? Are you absolutely a nervous wreck? Like, what's that moment like?
Whenever I was in college, we played Auburn and they brought me in. It was ESPN College Game Day, big game in college. And I wasn't the starting kicker at the time. And they brought me in, I think third or fourth quarter. And I had hyped it up so much. My friends and family are watching. It's College Game Day, Kirk Herbstreit. And that I can genuinely say, like, I have never been nervous for a game since. And so I kind of took that, experience and learned from it and was like, hey, like, let's just go out and do our job and be confident at it and know that we're going to put the ball between the uprights and don't think about the consequences of missing. Don't think about, the situation you're in. And ever since then, like I said, I haven't really been nervous. I've been a little anxious and excited to play in big games, but never, what if I miss kind of deal. And so whenever that was my first NFL game was Cleveland versus Oakland. They brought me in. Mike Nugent went on IR, and I asked Mike, I said, hey, like, what's the key to kicking off the dirt in Oakland? Like, what do I need to do? And he said, well, first of all, you need to go out there and kick on it. And so we did. We made a special trip. We made a special trip out to Oakland, from Alameda to Oakland, and went and kicked on the dirt. And I struggled, man. I mean, it's imagine kicking off a clay infield. It's like kicking off concrete. The ball ends up to draw more than if you're kicking and planting off of grass or turf. And so, yeah, both of my misses were pulls. I drew the ball and missed it wide left. Thankfully, I got a few chances and got to come back and hit a game winner in overtime. But such a cool experience, for me as a kid, coming from Central Texas, being 5'9", 160 pounds, I would have never thought that I'd play in the National Football League. And so to come in as my first game and have a game winner was pretty neat.
I can't even imagine the experience. A cool name you just threw out, Mike Nugent. For a lot of us Browns fans, I don't have, I'll admittedly say this, I don't have like a ton of favorite kickers. But Mike Nugent he's like up there in the upper echelon of some of my favorite Buckeyes players. So to hear you just like casually throw out Mike Nugent, I'm very jealous.
Yeah, that was back in 2018, and so it's been a couple of years since then. But the good thing with my profession is if you can do it long enough and do it successfully, you'll have a good career. And so that's why I haven't kind of hung it up yet, is because I continue, and we can lead into the UFL if you want to after this. But sure, that's why I continue to do what I do, is because I'm still competitive at it. Whenever I get to the point to where I'm being beat out at competitions or camps, or then it might be time to say, okay, I can't do this anymore. But, Phil Dawson kicked, I think, deep into his 30s, and had a good career. So it's definitely possible,
Yeah. And I mean, like in terms of kickers, you're still very young, right? I mean, you're not even 30, are you?
Right. Yeah. 29.
Yeah. So you've definitely got plenty of years ahead.
Oh, for sure. Yep. And to kind of transition to the UFL, like you said, I'm very kind of intrigued by the league. I think it's a really cool idea. I really like that the XFL and it was the USFL, right? They kind of merged into this one. Can you just, I guess I had it like, describe the vibe. Does it have an NFL feel? How is it approached? And do you get the sense like this thing has some staying power? Like there's some big names behind it.
Yeah. Absolutely. Now, there's definitely a budget, right? They're trying to be on budget this year versus, last year's XFL league. And so, to compare it to an NFL experience, it's night and day difference, but the competition is there. You look at names that are in the UFL, it's guys that are just like me that are outside looking in, that have played on NFL rosters. And so that's one thing that, I try to tell my friends back home and people that haven't been watching the UFL is like, listen, there's a lot of talent here, very similar to the National Football League, and you're getting that sort of play on Saturday, Sunday in spring football. It's just they're not on the roster. They're, outside of that 52-man squad or 53-man squad. So I think that's something, the message that the UFL needs to get across is like, we've got the talent. It's just, can they put the product in the field? And I think we're proving to do that.
Well, I know Cleveland has experienced this with this, but we had PJ Walker on our team just last year, and he came in and won two big games for us, one against the San Francisco 49ers. And he kind of made his name playing in a spring league, which got him onto the Panthers. And now, he's an NFL guy who went there, showed out in that league, and now he's on rosters in the NFL. So I think you guys have a ton of talent in the league. And I'm really interested to see where it goes, and I hope it sticks around for a long time.
Yeah, that tells you how difficult it is to stay in the National Football League once you get in. Fortunately for me, in my position, you can kick for a long time, but you look at the average service in the NFL is 3 to 4 years max. If you're lucky, you get that second contract. But it's a league of opportunity is what they're preaching down here. And for me, when I came out of college, obviously went to the Cardinals and kind of was in and out. And I said, my agent had asked if I wanted to play the CFL. And I was always kind of like, I'm an NFL or bust. I really don't have any desire to kick in some of these sub leagues. Like I'd rather move on with my life and do other things. And so fortunately I got some other NFL calls and opportunities that kept me from hanging it up. And then when I played in the first XFL, I had a great season until COVID hit. Had a couple 50 pluses and did well, and then got the call by Cleveland. Stayed in contact with Coach Prefer, and got to Cleveland. And then you talk about the second XFL, which was last season, had another great year, and then got me into Baltimore's mini camp, and then got me a workout with the Patriots late in the season. So it's creating more opportunities for me, and as long as it does that, I'm going to continue kicking.
I think the best thing for players is to keep putting things on tape. And if you can put good tape out there, you got to hope somebody will find it. And I guess
that's right.
So. I think it's a really cool league for you guys. I'm excited for you guys to be able to have something like this. We wanted to talk about the hybrid kickoff. You guys did it in the XFL last year. How do you think? How different was it for you compared to everything you've done in your career? How do you think it's going to affect the NFL?
Yeah, so we did that kick in the first XFL, which was in 2019?
Yeah.
So we did the same kickoff in 2019. So I was used to it going into the last season's XFL. And so whenever the NFL made the move to adopt this kickoff, I was shocked, honestly. I did not see it coming. And I think the fans and players didn't see it coming either. But they they continue to preach health and player safety. And I really firmly believe that the NFL cares and believes about that, because you do see the effects of CTE and player injuries and the tenure of NFL players. And you see, the consequences of playing the game of football that we love. And as fans, sometimes you don't see that. And so I do believe that it is for player health and safety, but at the same time, they also want to generate returns. I think the kickoff has evolved to, it had evolved to up until the point of this new rule of as basically a pointless play. Kick it out of the back of the end zone, hit a touchback, go to the restroom, get your snack break or whatever you need to do, because, Patrick Mahomes is going to run up on the 20-yard line during, the CVS commercial break and start the drive. Like it eliminated the returners. It eliminated the Devin Hesters of the world, because kickers just, were hitting it out of the back of the end zone. So I'm all for it, man. I think it's great. I think you're going to see a lot more points scored because of field position, and you'll see a lot more electric returns because of this new rule. So I think it's a win-win for both. I think it's a win for player health and safety, and then it makes the kickoff more interesting.
Yeah, that's what we've been telling people too, on the show, is this is an exciting time for NFL, because the kickoff, like you said, I mean, it was essentially being done away with. Yeah. So to make it an actual play, not just to keep the kickoff in the game, but to make it a play where there's scheming and blocking and different plays can run, and the defense can do different. They might drop people. I don't know how it all works, but I'm excited to see it on the field. I think it's going to be a lot of fun.
I think it could change up the way you build a roster in terms of some of like your fringe guys, where maybe you wouldn't have kept a guy if 95% of the kicks go out of the back of the end zone. But if this guy's a great return guy, you might have to make a hard decision, because he could be a weapon, because he's going to get to touch the ball 3 or 4 times in a game, as opposed to not touching it at all the whole game. So I think it adds a lot of extra strategy in terms of roster building and all kinds of stuff to the game that maybe some people haven't thought about.
Yeah, that's right. And I think you'll see coordinators get very creative, as far as, like you mentioned, scheming, but the return game has, in college, we got to take advantage of it a little bit. When I was at Kansas State, where our special teams and with Tyler Lockett, we were phenomenal at the return game. And so, when you transition to the National Football League, teams said, we don't want to kick it to Tyler Lockett. We don't want to kick it to some of these big name returners, just hit it out the back. It eliminated the fun out of it. So I look forward to it, man. There's all kinds of different kinks that we worked out, in the first XFL and then now this XFL, that I think the NFL won't have to worry about, because we solved some of those problems early on.
It's awesome. So I was scouring the internet, doing research for you, man. I'm on YouTube and I find this video in Texas, 70-yard field goal. And so I watch it, And I'm like, holy shit, we gotta bring this up. So I guess the question, I mean, you cleared by a lot. So the question I wanted to ask you is, what's the longest you've made like in practice? Like, you know, like what's the all time for you, man?
I mean, full snap operation, you know, even in the UFL, we worked back to, I think it was like 64 the other day.
Yep.
But for me, you know, how often, and people ask that all the time, you know, what do you think your longest kick is? How strong is your leg? And I've always not really cared about it because the money kicks, as we call it, you know, the money spot is that 40 to 45 range for kickers. And so if you can be consistent at that range, who cares if you're a Justin Tucker that can hit a 64-yarder? You know, at the end of the day, if it comes down to a playoff game and you miss a 38-yard field goal, the big leg doesn't matter. So I've always been focused on consistency in the short range kicks. But yeah, that 70-yard field goal was fun to do. We had to hit it a couple times to do that. But, you know, you mentioned a long kick. Whenever I was with Baltimore in minicamp, this kind of changed my perspective completely of how to kick a football and how frequently is, you know, I had been with these NFL veterans, like I mentioned, Mike Nugent, Phil Dawson, Chris Boswell. I spent time with him in Pittsburgh, Jake Elliott in Philly, and I got to watch them and how they, you know, went through their warm up and their entire routine. And this last season when I was in Baltimore with Justin Tucker, he's just a different animal. I mean, he probably kicks, you know, 60 to 70 balls a day when the average kicker might hit, you know, 30, 40, 50 balls. And, you know, Sam Cook, who's one of the assistant special teams coaches now, who was the holder for Tucker, you know, we were backing up in pre-practice and minicamp, and I think I got back to like 64, 65, you know, a slight breeze. And Tucker just keeps going. And I remember looking over my shoulder like, when is this dude going to stop? And so I asked Sam, and I said, Sam, is this normal or is he showing off? Like, is he, you know, showing off in front of the new kid that came in? And Sam was like, no, this is normal. Watch him. So Tuck went back. I think it was like 78 or 80 yards or something with like not even a breeze. And the dude is four-stepping it and, you know, hitting it halfway up the pipe. It's like, it's just mind-boggling what that guy can do. So yeah, when you try to compare another kicker to Justin Tucker, it's just, not possible.
Don't even try.
Yeah.
We're obviously not Ravens fans, but I don't think there's any, I think he's going to go down as the best ever if he's not already considered that. I mean, Vinatieri's got the big kicks, but Justin Tucker, like you got to see it firsthand. He's a freak.
Yeah. If he can stay healthy, you know, that's the thing is, you know, when you put that much strain and stress on your body, but, you know, then again, he's in you know, perfect shape. So yeah, I would imagine he's going to have a very long career doing what he does.
So I kind of had I guess this is maybe we'll call it silly question. I don't know how involved he is, but you've been in the XFL a couple times now. Have you ever met The Rock?
No, I have not.
Okay.
I have not. We did have a meet and greet last season where he kind of came in with some of the owners and talked on stage. But the size of that man is unbelievable compared to, you know, a guy like me. So yeah, that was cool to see him, and I'd never seen him in person before. And so to see him in person compared to the, you know, even large football players that are playing in the UFL, he just towers over at least. But he's a lot of fun, and he's given us the opportunity to continue playing the sport that we love, and I'm super grateful for that.
Yeah, I was just curious because like I like The Rock, but everything he does is very like intense. And so I was just like, did he just like come up to you and be like, kick that ball, man? Like, I don't know. I was just curious.
No, I mean, he's definitely an actor. You know, he knows which way to pose and which way to look and act. And so that was, you know, you can definitely tell that he was putting on a show. But
he seems like
like I said, it's cool being around him, just at least getting to know him a little bit from a distance.
Nice. So like I mentioned before we came on, we have what we call the Dog Pack. They are the Patreon members for our show. We wanted to give them an opportunity, see if there's anything they wanted to ask you. So these next couple of questions come from those guys. I don't know how much you've seen talk about new stadiums in Cleveland, if they want to build a new one, fix up the old one. You kind of already touched about it a little bit. If you're in Cleveland, Are you pro dome or are you pro open air? I feel like I know which way you're going to go.
I watched your show, before, so I got to see what your guys' opinion was. And so I prepared for this, but I'm absolutely, for a fan atmosphere and for a competitive aspect, Cleveland needs to be playing football outside. And so
we'll edit that out. No, I'm just joking.
I know. I saw your show, and y'all were dogging on people who were saying, well, that's not football, the AFC North. And I'm like, dang, that's me, man. That's my opinion. And I think that's what, made Phil Dawson so good is he was able to be competitive in that environment. Now me selfishly as a kicker, of course, I would love to play in a dome. If Cleveland had a dome, that'd be another team that, hey, let's put on my list to say I can be successful in that atmosphere. But, you talk Buffalo, you talk about Baltimore, Philly, all those teams kind of in the Northeast, and Cleveland being one of them, playing on the lake, snow coming down, that's how I see Cleveland Brown football. Playing in a dome, the Detroit Lions, that's easy. That's easy. So.
Sign me up for easy.
All right, so let's see. This next question says, what sport do you follow outside of football? I guess let's do this. What's your favorite sport to watch outside of football, and then what's your favorite sport to play?
Yeah. To play or watch, man, I love golf. It's very similar. It's very similar to what I do. We talked about it a little bit before the show, but the mental aspect as well, and watching Full Swing and getting to see behind the scenes of what those guys go through, the ins and the outs of injuries and qualifying events and things like that. That's what I do on a daily basis. It hit me completely. And so, I love playing. I love going out. It's kind of a form of yoga for me. I get to focus on the one swing at a time, the 4-foot putts that I miss by, which is equivalent to, a 35 or 33 yard extra point. So, right. That's what I love doing, man. I love playing golf. I have a 2-year-old son, and I took him and my wife out to the Phoenix Open, which I found out on Reddit. That was one of the top 30 things not to do in the world is to take your wife and kid to the Phoenix Open. So, but we had a great time, man. We had a good time. Took him out and he was playing in the mud, and I'm sure you guys saw all of that. But that's my sport outside of football.
Who's your favorite golfer?
My favorite golfer. So I played with him in the when I was with the Raiders. I got to play in the Shriners Open Pro-Am out in Las Vegas. And they had invited me to play out in that. So I got to play with Charlie Hoffman.
Okay.
And so I got to know him, for a round of 18 holes, not very long. But him and I stayed in contact since, 2018 or 2019, whenever that was. And so to see his career, with the ups and downs and the success, we went out to, as I mentioned, the Phoenix Open, and he got us tickets and got my family tickets and stuff like that. I'm like, man, let's have a kicker mentality and let's do this thing. Let's really, you're capable of competing again. And did I have an influence on him? I don't know, probably not. But I think he ended up going to a playoff hole and finishing second. So, Charlie Hoffman, if you watch this, man, I feel like I was responsible for stuff like that.
I like to think he does. Yep. I like to think he's probably a huge listener.
I'll tag him in it.
There we go.
Listen on. Yeah.
This episode is brought to you by Danger Coffee. Browns fans, we talk about how Danger Coffee is made free from mold toxins that are in 45% of the world's coffee, but that's not all that Danger Coffee has to offer. Mineral and nutrient deficiencies are a big deal. They make you feel sick, tired, stressed, and they can give you brain fog. These deficiencies negatively affect your immune system, your digestion, sleep, metabolism. Have you ever wondered why you get an initial burst from your coffee, but then you get that little crash not long after? Danger Coffee's patent-pending process remineralizes your body with more than 50 trace minerals and electrolytes, leaving you more energized, engaged, powerful. These micronutrients enter the cells to boost performance. They bind to toxins to provide detoxification support. I know that sounds like a lot, but the bottom line, guys, is minerals matter. And most of us really don't get enough of them on a daily basis. Danger Coffee delivers micronutrients. Plus, it gives you access to the minerals you already have. Head to dangercoffee.com, use our code DAWGS, DAWGS, for 10% off your order. And that code can be used over and over. So you get 10% off every order you make using code DAWGS. It's time to start every day off with a cup of coffee that gets you going and actually keeps you going. dangercoffee.com, code DAWGS. Before we move on, Ohio, Bet365 is offering new users $150 in bonus bets this month. To receive your bonus bets, all you have to do is sign up for Bet365 using our link, make a first deposit of $10, and place a $5 wager on any game. Once that first $5 bet settles, you will receive $150 in bonus bets, even if you lose the bet. To be eligible for this sign-up bonus, you must sign up through our link down in the description. So if you haven't yet signed up for Bet365, click our link in the description and place that first bet. This offer is only available for new customers who are 21 and older and physically present in Ohio. Please gamble responsibly. If you or a loved one has a gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER. Check the episode description for the full terms to see if you can qualify.
So during your time in Cleveland, did you have a favorite spot to hang out or eat while you were here?
I know it was COVID, but
yeah,
if there's anything open.
Yeah, let me think about that. When I was in Cleveland, I'd have to look it up. Dang it. I wish I would have known you were going to ask that question, because there were a few spots in Cleveland that I did like. But because of COVID, the team was very reluctant to kind of give us freedom outside of the facility. Especially for me as a practice squad player. I wasn't around, I was around the players, but with the social distancing, we had little monitors that would blink red and green and tell us whenever we were close contact. So I stayed away from a lot of people, and I was pretty scared to kind of go into the city. So we spent a lot of time at Cuyahoga Valley National Park. My wife and I think we went almost every day with the dog, and spent a lot of time in enjoying that side of the Cleveland, Berea area. And we traveled all over, up and down the lake, all sorts of small towns in Ohio. We visited kind of the very northeast part of Ohio, and just got to know the people, Midwestern, people. And I loved it, man. I loved every bit of it. If AB wants to bring me back, I'd come back in a heartbeat, because we loved it, man.
Yeah.
It's a good spot. It's a good place to raise kids, and just all around good people.
Yeah, the people that aren't from here, I don't think really realize how awesome. Like Northeast Ohio is a really great place to live, raise a family. Like you said, it's just it's a pretty place. It's cool. I've always enjoyed being here.
Yeah, if we can get get you back, there's a good chance he'll be playing in a dome.
So what's the verdict? I heard they bought some land. I haven't kept up too much, but what's the status on that?
So I think both sides are playing a little bit of hardball. The Browns have purchased land in Brook Park that I think they're kind of trying to use to leverage against the city about, like, hey, we could go here if we wanted. The city's trying to enact the Modell law, saying that they can't move without offering to sell the team or something to somebody local. So I think it's just a lot of politicking right now. I get the sense they're going to build a new stadium, but I don't know if anybody really knows yet what's going to happen.
Yeah. I did enjoy First Energy, but the wind there was brutal. I mean, you guys know, I was fortunately, when I was on practice squad, I was up in a nice warm box. Funny story to that too, is my wife came up to a game, and of course it was raining and snowing, at that point in the season. And so she was out with the player family tickets out, in the elements, and I'm up in a nice warm box with food and drink and the rest of the practice squad players. And so she had, I don't know, some inexpensive jacket, and she froze her tail off. And I think the very next day, we went to the Canada Goose store, and I bought her a Canada Goose jacket. I was like, okay, if you're going to come to these games, like, I'm going to set you up for success. And so she did. So she had a good time with that. But I get it, man. I get it. For what's the going back to the stadium? I know you already asked that question, but I think it's important for Cleveland. I mean, what is your stance? I watched the episode a little bit before, but what do you guys think? I mean, what are the fans wanting?
It depends on who you talk to. Like, I'm a season ticket holder, and I've been doing it for, I think we're going on 5 years. My wife doesn't go to a game after like week 6. Like, I'm just like, hey, who want, like, and then I can't get anybody to go. So it's me and my mom. We're diehard. We go up every week, right. But like, it depends on who you ask. It'd be nice to like not be frozen or soaked, but either way, like, I don't care. That was like the ultimate bucket list thing, was to get to go to Browns games like that. So either way, it's fine.
For me, it's not. I'm very pro dome. I like the idea of the dome, but to me, the bigger issue is location and being able to get there. It's getting into Cleveland on game day. You have to be in Cleveland 6 hours before the game starts, because they start shutting roads down. You park quarter mile, half a mile away. Like, it's just, if they could redo the shorefront and make it accessible, and I can get into the game in a normal amount of time and get out, and it's nice. Sure, I maybe missed the idea of the dome, but I could get behind that at least. It's the cold, the rain, and the fact that I have to be there 6-7 hours early to even get into the game on time. All those things are like, they have me going, let's go become the Brook Park Browns. So that's kind of,
it's definitely hard. It's hard for me to have a differing opinion than that, because I did have, you mentioned the traffic. I'm like, well, I got to fly by everybody with my player parking pass and go park right next to the stadium and walk, a 10-step block and go right in. And so, that I don't have that experience, but I do think, from a competitive side, you guys hit the nail on the head. Our teams wanting, or our fans, or even management. I think management understands that, but our teams wanting their quarterback to throw for 300 yards, while being a Cleveland Brown. But at the same time, I think there's a lot to unpack there. It depends what you want. Do you want that quarterback that can perform, or do you want the quarterback that can perform in the elements and get a win?
Yeah, we use week 1 of this past season all the time as the example, because we went up to the game. We were all there. It's Browns-Bengals season opener at home. I mean, the Bengals are coming in. Everybody's got them hyped up like AFC, contenders and all this stuff. And we whooped them 24-3 in a game that it rained the entire game. And afterward, looking back now, people will say, the defense played great. The offense sucked. Deshaun Watson wasn't very good. And if you go back and think about that game, it's like it rained the whole time. And he had 200 yards and 2 touchdowns. Like, that's in the rain. That's pretty good, especially when you're up that big and you don't need to throw. We're running the ball a lot.
Yeah, and came out with a win.
Exactly. Yes. That's the biggest stat. Yep.
Yeah, that was another thing that the consistent thing that I saw between teams in the NFL is that winning in the National Football League is very, very hard, especially on a game-to-game basis, because the talent is it's the pinnacle of our sport.
Yep.
And you're talking about, these 5-star recruits from high school making it, and then them not even making the Division I team. And, and so I think when you get to the National Football League, winning games is very difficult. And that's the one thing that I saw across teams, is that who cares what the stats were? Who cares about all those things? The fans can be critical of that. I totally get it. But the coaches are like, at the end of the day, a win's a win.
Yep.
And however we need to do that to make it possible, that's what we're going to do. So,
which
kind of a different aspect.
I would say just you saying that, though, makes me even appreciate this past season even more, because we had all the injuries. We had 5 different starting quarterbacks through the season. We had every excuse to not win games, and yet we still won 11. Probably could have won 12 if we'd have played starters at the end of the season and made the playoffs, which it still is like, it blows my mind.
And I'm happy to hear you kind of give some insight in terms of like what the coaches are saying about stats and how players feel about it, because when we first started this podcast, there was no doubt I was the fanatic that was like, we didn't win the right way. We should have won by 30 and we only won by 29. We suck, and then the more I do the podcast, the more like we've met a couple players, meeting guys like you who kind of give us insights into what it's actually like to be a professional athlete. The more you realize like, it's hard. Just being consistent is hard, because the other guys are professionals too. So it's not about window dressing and looking good it's just about getting the win and surviving to the next week and staying healthy and doing all those things. So I think a lot of guys who were like me 4 years ago, it's hard to wrap their mind around the fact like this is hard, and just getting wins is tough.
Well, and I think that can kind of tie into my experience with Phil Dawson. Whenever I was with Phil and coming out of college too, you always wanted to hit what we would call an A ball, right? An A plus or a B ball, where it was a perfect end over end rotator. It was a high kick. It was right down the middle. And that's what us as kickers strive for, of course, to be consistent. And so when I got to Arizona, that's what I tried to do. I tried to outkick Phil by hitting that A ball every single time. And I'm sitting here competing against Phil, and I'm watching his ball that, he would hit a good one that would be perfect end over end. He'd hit maybe an X ball but the guy never missed, like ever. I mean, I'd never been around a kicker that I was competing with where I was like, I don't think I have an opportunity to win this job, because he doesn't miss. We went out during training camp. We went to up to Glendale to the stadium, and we were kicking on skinny posts. I mean, they were skinnier than skinny. They were like arena posts, and still had, I think, 4 team reps or something, and didn't miss. I think I went like 3 for 4 or something, and I just was like, how is this guy doing it? Well, he's been kicking in the league for 15 years. That's why he does it, And so that kind of ties into that performance side. As Phil had told me, he's like, if you want to play along this league, who cares what your ball flight looks like? Just make the damn kick. And that's, it's easier said than done, of course, but that was some advice that he had given to me.
Yep. I think that's good advice, and that's good for the fans to hear, to the people who listen to the show who can be up in our comment section just go losing their mind because we didn't win by 2 scores against a team that had a worse record. And it's like, guys, we won a National Football League game. So I think that's awesome to hear from you. I love getting insight. Getting a chance to talk to players is so cool to kind of just see what it's like inside the locker room and that kind of stuff. So I really appreciate that. I appreciate you being on here, man. I didn't know how long we were going to go, and I feel like I could go like another 2 hours, but I don't want to take up your whole night. So
I'm an open book, man. I had a podcast the other night that I thought was going to go like 15 minutes, and we went an hour 45. So, if y'all want to continue out, I'm an open book, man. I'd love to help out, on some opinions, even of the new kickoff rule. Actually, this would actually be relevant to you guys that I spoke about. And I think maybe teams would find this interesting, or fans would, if you don't mind me.
Go for it.
So, or now the NFL kickoff. So if you look back at last year, our XFL tape, the first maybe 4 games of the year, we were getting beat up. I think Adam Schefter posted one of the videos that the St. Louis team ran a reverse on us, and then they took it to the house. So for the first 4 games, we really struggled. And it started to have an effect on our game, obviously, with field position and things like that. And so a name that you guys are familiar with, Coach Greg Williams, who was in Cleveland for quite a bit, he stepped in. I remember he came into a meeting, and I knew he was going to do this because I talked to him ahead of time. And he stepped in and he said, all right, guys, like, forget everything that we're doing. This is how we're going to do it going forward. It's basically my way, and that's how we're going to do it. And so from that point on, instead of being defensive and kind of catching the returner and blocking and staying safe, we started to become way more aggressive. And so Coach Williams had wanted me to kick the ball wide. And you see me, if you watch the tape, you'd see me kind of flirt with the sideline a little bit in order to pin the returner. Because as you know, in this new kickoff rule, the cover unit can't move until the ball is touched.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And so hang time doesn't matter anymore. It's purely directional. And so Coach Williams wanted me to put it out wide, and that's what I did. So I put it out wide, and I think we were pinning them on like the 15-yard line. I mean, their average start point had to be on average inside the 20. I mean, we were killing it the last half of the season because Greg wanted to be aggressive. And I think that's his, as you guys know, I mean, that was his mentality in the NFL, was let's be aggressive, let's be attacking, and let's make plays. And that's what we did. And so I think you'll see maybe a difference between teams in the NFL trying to figure out what works. And hopefully they watch the XFL tape, because it was a night and day transition for us. It went from we're getting our butts whooped on a kickoff unit standpoint to all of a sudden we're making plays and we're making the opposing team drive 85 yards instead of, 60. So it was a big transition for us to figure out. And Greg Williams is all responsible for that, man. He fixed it for us.
That doesn't sound like him. My way or the highway. That doesn't sound like the Greg Williams that I know. I wanted to I was thinking of another question to ask. I was like, man, you've played in both of these leagues. I was thinking, like, if there was any way you could, one thing to change about the NFL, what would it be? And then I started thinking about, like, kind of the state of officiating, and we really like some of the things that the XFL and now like the UFL are doing with transparency, having the skybox guy. Like, do you think that's something that the NFL should try to adopt? I feel like if they're willing to try this kickoff thing, why would they not also look in that direction for other meaningful changes?
I agree wholeheartedly. I think the fans need to hear. It needs to be an open book, right? As far as officiating goes, because now when you talk about like the play calling, I think that can be a hairy subject in the National Football League because the playbook is sacred in the NFL. And so you wouldn't want to give up anything like that, on national television, especially if the opponent could be listening in. But as far as officiating goes, whenever they did that back in 2018 with, Mike Pereira and Dean Blandino, we had many meetings with them beforehand. And they said, we're going to be as transparent as possible. We want the fans to hear the discussions with the officials on the field, to look inside the replay booth. I mean, why in any reason would that not be transparent? And so I think that would be really cool if the NFL took that over. And I think fans would appreciate that because at the end of the day, we want to get the call right. And I think there's sometimes a lot of things that aren't called right in the NFL, and all of us are scratching our heads like it was blatantly obviously that was pass interference. Like, why can that not be reviewed or overturned? And the XFL has found that kind of happy medium, not even happy medium, basically just saying, we're going to expose the officials and we're going to get the call right. And so they do that through replay. They do that through the official up in the box. They do that through Dean Blandino in New York, and they're all watching how it goes down. And I think it's been really successful for the XFL and the UFL now. And I think the NFL, might look into something like that. I think it'd be really neat.
I was going to say, I hope so, because, we deal a lot, we entertain a lot of different audiences. So we do a lot on social media, and I hear a lot of fans that are definitely going down the path of being very convinced anymore that some of this stuff is really fixed, that some of these, because like you said, some of this stuff is so blatantly obvious. It's like, how could you get that wrong? You're a professional referee. And I think that with the rapid growth of sports betting and everything that's going on these days, the NFL needs to be very careful. I'm afraid they're walking a pretty tight line, and it's a sport that I love. It's a league that I love. I mean, we do this podcast. We love this sport, and I would just hate to see them tip over to that other side of where people no longer really give it validity anymore. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's right. That's exactly right. And I think it'd be fun for, now granted the XFL switched back to kind of the old style kickoff, so we're not doing it anymore. But I do think it would be neat for NFL fans to watch the UFL, and I encourage that, to watch the officiating transparency and try to push that opinion kind of onto the National Football League, because I enjoy watching it myself. I mean, I'm watching games on Saturday in the hotel room before our game on Sunday. I'm like, this is perfect. If the officials don't get it right, let's get it right. I mean, that's part of the reason of being officials and playing the game of football. So yeah, I think it's a great thing that the UFL introduced, and I'm glad they did it.
Awesome.
Awesome.
Well, we're coming up on pretty much what we normally do, so we'll wrap this thing up. I want to give you a chance to kind of tell the people, like you said, encourage them. DC Defenders, when are your games? How can they watch all that good stuff?
Yeah, so we play this Saturday against Arlington. I think it's on it's either Fox or ESPN. So we do get primetime coverage, which is sweet.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, last week we were playing during the women's championship game, basketball championship game. So I think we lost some viewership there. But it's the competition level. We talked about that early on in the show. Is like, it's not just guys that aren't capable of playing the NFL. Like, there's proven veterans that are playing in this league, and it's very competitive. So I think that's a fun aspect of it. I enjoy playing in the league because of that, and being around teammates that have had 3, 4, 5 year careers in the NFL. Like, that means something. And so that's pretty neat. But yeah, we play on primetime television. It's good quality football. It's in the spring. I mean, what else there is to watch on TV on a Saturday, Sunday evening? So I think it's a cool experience for fans to watch football.
Awesome, man. We really, really, really appreciate you
Absolutely.
being here, giving us
Yes.
so much of your time. This one, I was really excited to do this, and I feel like it eclipsed my expectations. So I'm super pumped. We got to meet you, talk to you. I'm definitely going to be tuning in, watching you, rooting for you.
Yes.
And I just really appreciate you being on here. Maybe we can even have you on again sometime. Thank you so much for taking time.
Absolutely, man. I've enjoyed watching you guys, even when I was with Cleveland and kind of followed the Browns. Like I listen in on your guys' stuff. So I definitely appreciate it. And anytime you guys want to have me on, man, I'd love to do it.
Awesome.
Awesome, man.
If you can lie. Are we big in the locker room? A lot of people listening to us. It's okay.
Now players listen, man. I mean, like when Mary Kay says some things, like players listen, man. So yeah, you guys are definitely some talk in the locker room.
There
So
we go.
dome
Okay.
versus, the dome versus not dome. I think that's a hot topic. So y'all keep on that one. But I'm gonna push for Cleveland Browns playing outside in the snow and in the elements. Like that's what I love about the National Football League.
Oh, awesome. Well, we appreciate you pumping up our ego a little bit right there. Again, taking time to be here, hanging out with us. We'll definitely have you back on sometime. And good luck for the rest of your season, everything you do going forward. We appreciate you being here.
Yeah, thanks, guys.
Again, we appreciate you guys being here. Huge shout out to Matt from the DC Defenders. That was an awesome interview.
Yes.
Having him on here, getting some insight into not only the mindset of a kicker, just the mindset of an NFL player, a professional athlete in general. I think he gave us a ton of cool insight into what it means to be a professional athlete and to be a professional kicker, and what can kind of be a solitary position. It's you're the only one out there kicking, and there's 70,000 eyes on you. And if you miss it, everybody's going to hate you. And if you make it, good, that was your one job.
Yep.
You know what I mean? It's kind of
brutal.
For other than a handful of guys kind of throughout the history of the game, it's kind of a thankless job. So I think you got to be really mentally tough to do it. Matt's a great guy. This is our first time meeting him. We can't wait to have him back on the show. So make sure you guys check him out when he plays for the DC Defenders on the weekends. They're on ESPN and Fox. So you get primetime games. Go support him. A lot of good players in these leagues. Support these leagues so we can keep them around. So we appreciate him being here. We appreciate you guys listening, supporting the show, and we'll see you guys next week.
Thanks for listening to another episode of the Dawgs Podcast. Make sure you subscribe on YouTube and follow us on Twitter at the Dawgs Podcast. Get your thoughts on the show at thedawgspodcast.com.
This episode is sponsored by Aura. Browns fans, your online data and identity are way too precious to be left just hanging out there in the open for these data stealing thugs to come after it, take it, and sell it to whoever they want. Scammers and spammers are just capitalizing on all of your data being sold, and I'm telling you right now, you don't even realize it because I didn't realize it. Head over to Aura, aura.com/dogs, DAWGS. Get a 14-day free trial. This is what I did. Create your account, and then you can run your data check, a free data check, and it will tell you how many data brokers are selling your information on the dark web and in different areas of the internet. And then Aura starts working immediately to remove your information from those places. I kept thinking I was good online. I was fine. I wasn't doing anything crazy with my information. I was being cautious while I was shopping online, all those things. And still, when I ran my check, I had 14 data brokers identified selling my information, and Aura immediately started taking my name and all my information, my address, my email, my phone number, everything out of those places. I am so sick and tired of getting the spam emails, getting the spam text messages, the calls, and it's time to put all that crap to an end. So check out Aura, 14-day free trial, run your checks, see what all the features they have to offer, like their VPN, their parental controls, everything that they have to protect your online identity. Aura.com/dogs. Take back control of your identity today.